Welcome to Season 3 of the Builders Podcast. I'm Matt Levenhagen. Here we share the journeys, strategies, and lessons that help entrepreneurs build what's next. Builders helping builders. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Kim Miller-Hershon. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you.
We're laughing because I was teasing her. I said I want to pronounce it Hershon or something, like just get fancy with it. I mean,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's right.
yeah, it's how it sounds. It's how it reads. Anyway, so Kim is a international business consultant, speaker, trainer, podcaster. In fact, I've been on her podcast. That episode's out there somewhere. I think it's already released.
It is.
And we had a lot of fun. And I said, you got to come on our podcast, or my podcast, The Builders. And here she is, because she's got a lot to talk about, a lot of good experience, a lot of business experience, coaching experience. I think we're going to get into some things that are going to be very interesting. But before we do that, as we do when we have somebody on for the first time, we like to get to know them a little bit. And also, hearing stories and origin stories and all that can be inspiring in and of itself. So with that, Kim, I'm going to throw it to you. You can go as far back as you want or whatever you want to do. What were you doing when you were a baby? And, no, not really.
Yeah. Well, one interesting thing, though, is that I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am actually a San Francisco native, which I feel like in and of itself is unique, right? I don't think there's a... Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever known a native from there. I know people that live there, or moved there.
So that's an interesting thing. I think, though, in terms of my kind of origin story, my story to how I got to what I currently do, I think it's really twofold. People ask me, how long have you been coaching? And I often glibly answer, I think I've been coaching my entire life. I just figured out a way to get paid for it. But I think I do have a natural affinity for coaching. I think, though, in a particular way, which I think we'll get into sort of my coaching philosophy later, but I was never a good employee, right? Like, I just couldn't sort of find my space in organizations. And I actually had a lot of shame around that. I felt like I should be able to do this better. And the last part of my career before I started my own business, I was in engineering firms. And okay, we've just met each other, but look at me in an engineering firm, right? You think that might have been a little bit of a mismatch?
Could have been fun.
Could have been fun. Wasn't. But I think what I did, which I think is, I hear over and over again in my coaching practice, which is I tried to fit in. So and listen, I love engineers. So when I say I kind of dulled myself, I'm not talking about engineers. What I'm talking about is me as this having a very big personality, being very loud and like colorful. And so for me, in order to fit into that environment, I chose to dull myself to fit in, or what I thought was.
You almost have to do that. I mean, immediately, because I can be a little fun too, and I like to, even talking to clients and things like that, I like to use emojis. I make jokes, and sometimes they don't reply to those jokes. They don't laugh back. So you have to kind of gauge the room,
Right?
Dial it back, right? Yeah,
Right. And so, and I think you're really hitting on a good point, which is that, like, it is a skill, right? To be able to read the room and fit into that. And I think I really hone that. Here's, though, the difference. The difference is that when you can do it situationally but really hold on to your own authenticity and identity.
Mm.
I think that is smart, and that's a skill. When you put yourself in a situation where you do it 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, that creates a huge amount of stress and de-stress, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my experience. I ended up getting laid off, which I did in fact get laid off, but honestly, I was just getting fired and they were having a layoff and so, right?
There's their opportunity. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was their opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, some of it was circumstantial. The manager who hired me left. So they brought in a new manager who was really old school, I think, in thinking about I my position was business development and marketing. And at the end of the day, he did not value the business development part, the relationship building part of it. What he really wanted was admin,
Mm.
right? What he really wanted was somebody to just do proposals, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And not that wasn't a good fit for me and my skill set. So in a lot of ways, what I like to say about that is the universe did for me what I couldn't do for myself, right? And then so that engineering firm worked on the design side of very large buildings, right? Designing very large buildings. And it was 2010, the end of 2009. So the real estate had already crashed and there just weren't any jobs, right? And you know
Mm.
what's funny? In the moment, this also, right, goes to how we think about things. Like, at the time, before I got laid off, I was like, "I'm the luckiest biz dev person in the business right now," because so many people had been laid off before me, right?
Right. Right.
And I was like, "I'm sitting pretty here," right?
Yeah.
Like,
Got a little confident.
"I'm
Yeah.
doing great."
Yeah.
Well, by the time I got laid off, the the market was flooded with people
Mm.
who did what I did, right?
Mm.
So, uh, it I had to get creative, right? And I looked back at that job and I thought, what were the parts of it that I really enjoyed? Because a lot of it I didn't. I
I
loved Go ahead.
no. I'll let you finish your thought in a second. As you're talking, I'm like, this is one of the things I think. You could be having a bad time somewhere or whatever. You could be working for somebody or even in a business and being that self-aware of like kind of gauging, like, is this the right thing for you? Like, you're not failing if you figure out. So if you're doing something, you go and I'm speaking from experience where I've done things where it's like this, you're gung ho in the beginning and this is going to be great. I'm going to be making good money, but then you get in there and you're super unhappy or you don't mesh with the people or there's something like that. And that's not really, I don't look at that as, I mean, it's kind of, I don't look at it as a failure. It's like, you're just learning, these are lessons
Mhm.
and not to do that particular thing again. And I love where you're going with this is where you also then, once it's over or whatever, you go back and say again, that's how I ended up doing web design development. As I got burned out in the 2000s doing just internet marketing, affiliate marketing, and all the stuff I was doing back then, digital products. And but once that was passed, I'm like, I look back at, well, what did I enjoy doing? What did I really like doing? I like building sites and tinkering around with sites and fixing my buttons and spending hours building memberships and maybe I can turn that into some and do that for other people. But that seems like where you're going.
Yeah, yeah, you got it right on the nose. I think that, I looked back and I said, "Okay, so what did I love?" And one of my favorite things was, in a good economy, these engineers who actually, by the way, all were responsible for bringing in projects. because
Mm,
they all had billable hours that they had to meet. So they needed to be working on projects, and even though I was there to facilitate the business development, their job really was to close business. So
gotcha.
what the thing that and then in a good economy, what would happen is they would just work on projects and then people would just call them, right? Because they heard, "Oh, you worked on this project. Can you work on this project?" In a bad economy, you have to go out there and you have to find the projects, right? And the
Mhm.
engineers were like, "Oh, no, no, I just need to sit here and wait for the phone to ring,"
Right, right,
right?
right. Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, "Well, how's that working for you?" Right? But they really had their philosophy is, well, the work will speak for itself, right? And what I realized pretty early on was that if I called it business development and I said, well, you have to network, you have to write, like, you have to sell, like, those are just dirty words, right? And there was a huge amount of resistance. So, what I really developed and what I got really good at was helping them do the activities that they needed to do. It's like, well, no, I'm not going to network, but hey, will you go out to lunch? Like if I set up a lunch, right, with, these people, will you go to lunch with us? Right? Sure, I'll go. Yeah, that's a nice guy. Sure, I'll go out to lunch. Right. And listen, what I want to say really, in the same way as I said, I don't see engineers as being dull. I think the same thing that I want to say about them doing business development. I think that I wasn't trying to deceive them. Here's the thing, they needed the projects in order to
Yeah,
keep their jobs, right? So I was simply finding a way to help them do really what they needed to do, right? And so I got really good at framing it in a way that worked for them so that they could achieve their goals. Then I was
very
like,
nice.
"Oh my god, that's a coach." Right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
And so that is, really that's my origin story. That's
That was
how
kinda
I
the light bulb moment where you were
right.
just yeah. And did you so you were so when you got laid off and I mean, why were you thinking then to go into business for yourself or do coaching or whatever? What was the beside that experience, was that it? Or was there something else that you always wanted to do this?
So I did want to be a coach. I think I was way too worried about I think there's a couple things. First of all, I was way too worried about what other people would think, right? Like,
Mm,
like, would they think that I was authentic or legitimate, right? And number 2, let's just be right, you have your own business. Let's just, like, take a moment to, like, we're talking to the audience who are builders. Let's just have a moment of honesty here. I started with no clients, right?
yeah.
Like, I didn't make any money. It's scary as heck, right? And so that wasn't listen, okay, so you know what? There were consequences. This did not go smooth or easy not making money, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of a sacrifice you were you could have gotten another job,
Right.
like
But
my wife would have wished I would have done several times, but here I
see,
am.
there you go. Right. But
"Can't just
I
get a real
think
job."
yeah, I think the so I think the other interesting thing about maybe my story is that I don't have a super long career because I chose to stay home with my kids.
Mm,
So that's the other sort of piece of this. It wasn't really that easy for me to go out and just find another job, especially in a down economy, because I didn't have years and years of experience.
So it was
right?
actually easier for you to maybe pursue doing something on your own, especially
Exactly.
with the online and communication like it is today. And
Mhm. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So I think I'd always really had the desire to have my own business. I don't think I had the guts to do it, but I really felt, frankly, backed into a corner.
Mm,
Like, it was a scrappy moment of, "I gotta figure this out," right? Like, I applied for, a gazillion jobs, but I also, we have 3 kids. I wasn't mobile.
mhm,
Right? So, it's not as if I was gonna move my family somewhere else in order for me to
right.
take a job, and because I didn't have a really long career, it's not like I was making like, I could get a job for, $250,000 a year, right? Or,
Yeah, yeah.
more. So even honestly, at that point, I think, if I could have made $100,000 in a salary, I would have thought that would have been
Mhm,
fine. But the reality really is that that wasn't really happening for me. And okay, Matt, can we just have a moment here? So I'm gonna just be super transparent. I'm always honest, but I'm gonna be transparent. And that is which maybe some of your listeners can really relate to, is that I didn't have a ton of job experience. So nobody was going to hire me in a position of authority, right?
mhm, mhm.
Except I see myself as a leader, like wicked smart, like really good at sort of what I do. And frankly, I didn't wanna take a, like, job that I was quote unquote "qualified" for,
Right, right.
right?
Right. So you had much more confidence in what you knew what you knew, and you knew what you were capable of, and you didn't want to. That's interesting. This whole thing's interesting. I just like at a pause there in a second. Like I'm just thinking like, again. I kind of relate to my life, the various transitions. And I remember when I had back before I started, I had this agency 8 years ago. I was at a company, and when I left there, we left on good terms and everything. In fact, I did more work for them after. It was just they were getting out of the business I was helping them with. And but I remember I did very similar to you. Like I didn't actually know immediately like what I wanted to do. And I was applying to jobs. I even actually worked for a local agency here in Milwaukee for a couple days, lasted a few days. And it was, and I'm trying, trying to figure out what they're doing over there. Um, but I ended up, but I was also at the same time building a little brand. I'm like, well, I could do an agency, and I actually was getting, so I knew other contractor or other web developers, and they had some business for me, and that just started to evolve. But I was also out there. So I think it's interesting when those of us that, have confidence in our skill sets and we want to do, but you don't know necessarily in the beginning what you want to do. You have to just sort of put it out there and see
Right.
what pops up and
Right.
go
I
with it.
mean,
Yeah.
exactly, and I would say when I first started, not surprisingly, my clients were all solopreneurs. Right? They were
Hmm.
really sort of like, I think of my early clients as being like they paid me to learn how to coach, right? Like
Yeah.
how to help people. Again, I think I had already started formulating it because
Hmm.
of my experience with the engineers. And I like to say I am not the right coach for everybody, right? And and no coach is, right?
Yeah.
But I think this idea about being authentically who you are and then helping people be successful from that place, right? Really pushing against that idea of one size fits all, right? Like,
Mm. Yeah.
There is a road to success. Okay, Matt, you want to build websites? Well, let's look at the most successful website agency owners, and then let's build your business exactly like that. Well, may work for you, may not work for you. Also, maybe you're like, "Yes, I want that success, but I'm also not that person. So I
Yeah.
can't execute in the exact same way as they executed." And I think what happens often is that our answer to that is we're gonna try, and then if we can't do that, like, you just don't get to have that success, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's a bad answer.
Right. Right. It doesn't mean you don't want to just be like, give up on the whole idea and
Right.
have to go flip burgers or something.
Right. But I think often we get very caught up in the way that we think things should work, or the way other people have made them work, or what the leadership book told you should do,
Uh-huh.
or the entrepreneur book and how you do it. And I think there's a huge gap often between that and who you are. Right. And I think my mission is you get to have both things, right?
I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is and it's so I think resonates with me because it's like I also live it, right? I'd like to think
Hmm.
I like to sort of like if we think about a fitness trainer, right? You've got your fitness trainers who are either former professional athletes or even maybe not professional athlete, but they're athletes, they've always been fit. They and then they become trainers to help other people achieve that goal, right? Then you have trainers who have maybe been overweight or they never exercised, right? And then they have been on this journey and they're taking other people on the journey with them, right?
On the same journey. Yeah.
On the same journey. I feel like I'm the latter, right? I would say yes. Do I have an affinity, a natural affinity for this? Sure. Yes, I do. But have I worked my tushy off, personally and professionally to really hone in on how, like, it's one thing to say, okay, sure, be yourself and be successful. It's all, it's a whole nother thing to figure out how to execute on that, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. 'Cause, you like I know I've met many agency owners over the years. I work with agencies. I partner with agencies and know their owners and stuff like that. But the personality differences are just dramatic from one to another. Even their age
Yeah.
differences and all that make a difference and their experience. But everyone brings something different to the plate, different personalities. And you can tell almost when you look at a company, there's actually a ripple effect. Like you can tell, like the agency itself kind of reflects that owner or the founder's personality, and just how they operate in the world, and that can be good or bad, depending. But I like to do the business with the people that I also compliment for myself, and that's one of the
Right,
things for me. I think I have I've always wanted to be authentic and do what I love to do, show up how I love to do it, use emojis all I want. I do dampen down in certain circumstances, but no, I want to, I kind of have a fun personality that can come out and all that, but also just in what I do. Like I know I've figured out, like you, like what I don't want to do. Like I
right,
don't, that's not my thing over there. I'm going to just do this thing. I'm more creative. I'm going to go, and I think building a business from that standpoint and being very conscious of who you do business with, that you like the people you're doing business with, because that's part of it. It's not just doing what you're authentically, you want to work with other authentic people or people that complement
right,
you as well.
right,
I've found. So,
right. And I think the other piece of that is to be really honest with yourself as you are growing your business about what you are really good at and what you should own, and eventually what somebody else should own in your business, right?
Mhm.
And I think that is sometimes a really hard thing for people who are building businesses to either give up something that they have been doing. One thing I've been working with a number of clients with are people who have successful businesses, right? So by all sort of measures, they're successful, right? They've got people
Mhm.
working for them, they're bringing in good revenue, they've got good margins, all the things, right? And they also want to grow, right? It is such an inflection point for an entrepreneur, which is, how do you give yourself a different job inside of your own business? Because it's not trite, but I think everybody would agree. What got you there is not what's going to get you X from where you are, because you literally cannot work 10x harder. What's interesting, Matt, is that for some people, they just want some relief, right? They just want, like, this is like, I've been grinding it. I'm exhausted, right?
Mm.
So I want a little bit more space. But for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who are younger, right, and have been successful, like, they would be like, I don't know what, like, I'm not looking for more time, because they would just fill the time, right?
Yep.
Because they're go, 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 right? They're not at the point in their life, like, if you give me more time, I'm just gonna, like, I'm not looking for leisure at this point, right? I wouldn't take it even if I had it. So, how do you build your business? How do you keep growing yourself in that circumstance? Right? There's a lot of really interesting questions to explore and answer with people.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what do I'd love to hear some examples, maybe people you've worked with, but I just remember, popped in my head somebody that was on this podcast not that long ago, where he was an engineer or he was a programmer or something, but he was also kind of a founder. But there was a certain point where he had to grow the business and he had to actually help out in other areas, and how that was challenging for him, because he's getting out, he's doing things that, like, he would have been fine just sitting in front of a computer programming all day long, but he's got to do these other things. But then he realized, which was interesting, he realized that when he was helping out support, he was looking at it from an engineering perspective, and he found ways to improve support. So
Right,
became an asset, kind of rotating throughout the company. So it's
right,
all kinds of, but it is difficult for a lot of people, especially if you, like, even me, like, I love my craft. I love to sit down and build stuff, build features, roll stuff out, launch stuff, all that. But been certain points in my agency where I've had to step away. I wasn't even doing any coding I'm back to that again because the ebbs and flows. But there was a period where I had like a dozen people doing stuff for me, and I was sitting back and just managing all that, and managing project managers, they're managing, I'm managing them, whatever, and getting more business and working with clients. And that is, I didn't mind that, but honestly, I would have rather just sat and wake up every day with a cup of coffee and sit down and build something, but
right,
it is what it is. Yeah.
right. Well, yes, and I just, I think what I would say is that everybody is different, and I think there is no, "Well, Matt, like, you should be doing this," right? But I do think that you have to align your goals, whether they're your revenue goals, they're your personal why, whatever it is, I think you have to align those things with how you spend your time, right? And
In the
listen,
business. Yeah.
in the business, right? And if
Yeah.
you're here is one thing that is sort of the harsh truth that I think a lot of people don't really wanna face, is that you can say that your priorities are whatever it is that your priorities are, but look at your calendar, because how you spend your time is what you are prioritizing,
Yeah.
period,
Yeah.
right? And so and again, no judgment, but that's real, right?
Yeah.
So it's not for anybody to say how you should spend your time. But what I would say is that how strong is your vision and your goal and your why? Because
Mhm.
honestly, if it doesn't give you chill bumps, you are not going to be able to get past the challenges and, frankly, your preferences. And
Mm.
let me just say this, everybody doesn't have to have a multi-million dollar business, right? Like, if that's what you want, fabulous. The other thing is too, which I think is just fascinating, is that I have a number of clients who have multi-million dollar businesses. Okay, so let's call it close enough. They're all around $2 million, give or take.
Mhm.
Okay. What's very interesting is, depending on the business, one of them, as income, and we're not talking about revenue, right? As income, makes over $1 million in salary, right? Or in income.
Wow. That's pretty
Another
good.
one makes $80,000,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And another one makes 200. And they all have about the same revenue,
Mhm.
right? So I think we make a lot of assumptions about sort of what a big business does, right? I've got um, two other clients who are attorneys. One has they both have boutique law firms. One also has lower annual revenue and makes over $1 million, and the other one has probably twice the revenue but makes about 800, right? So
I
business
I could totally like, as you're speaking, like I was talking to me, probably I peaked at about a dozen. Um, and I look at my revenue though, like, or my take home, what I pay myself, right? Um, it hasn't really changed. And we're much smaller, but
right,
I've learned from that also. Like my dreams to have it changed. We're just in a little bit of a dip here because we had a year or two. Uh, it was a challenge, but we're going to come back out of that, and Matt will probably be back in the more management shoes or giving some more stuff to other people. But when you say that, that's been something because I follow this kind of like profit first kind of thing where
right,
I
right,
pay
right, right,
myself
yeah,
first. And then, but I've also, I'm a bit of I always have been a little bit of a risk taker. And I'm also invest. I like to reinvest into my business, and sometimes though I do a little too much. Like I'm not as lean as I should be. Like right now I'm super lean, and I'm learning lessons along the way. But anyway, so it's really interesting when you're saying that because I've been aware of that with knowing other business people. It's like you know, it's not how much your revenue is necessarily and how well you're doing personally. Because
right.
there's so many different ways to build a business
That's
and
right.
how you architect it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what I would say is, if like if you've got a good business that you enjoy running and $80,000 works for you, then I don't know that there's something that needs to be fixed there. You know what I'm saying, right? Like I
Well,
think
yeah. Yeah, and I don't follow him that much anymore. I used to follow Gary Vee a lot more, but you see him on the feeds all the time. He pops up all the time. One of his things was, for a while, was I would see him talking about all the time, was like, he's got friends or whatever that are making just 60, 80,000 a year or whatever, and they're perfectly happy. That's like their thing, and good for them. Not everybody's out there to build these $1 million businesses
Right.
or become multi-million dollars,
Uh-huh.
millionaires themselves. But
Right. And then though, I think what we also though have to acknowledge, because I deal with this again sort of in my coaching practice all the time, which are people's money stories, right?
mm,
So, are you only paying yourself $80,000 because you think that's all you deserve?
mm,
Are you paying other people more than you're paying yourself? If you have, like, money is not a dirty word. Money creates opportunity. You may want luxury things, and I say, great. Like, if you're not hurting anybody else, you get to have what you want to have. And guess what? It does not make you greedy. And, if you want designer handbags or luxury travel or, real estate, like whatever you want, like, good on you. Go for it, right? And I think the other thing, though, that that I am just an advocate for, which, and listen, you don't have to be wealthy to do this, but I do have a value. And I think if I'm going to help you make more money, which I am happy to do, I also want to work with people who give back.
mm.
And you know what? I have no stake in how you do that, right? Like, you don't have to do it in any particular way. But the I think it's an and conversation, not an or conversation, right? Like, I build it and I have money for myself and my family and my legacy, um, or I give to charity. I think it's an and thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because recently I've interviewed a couple of nonprofit executives, and I have encouraged people to donate to their organizations. And as I like to say, you know, there is no donation too small or too big, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you don't have to be a millionaire in order to give, and give to what speaks to your heart, right? What
Or you
you
can give your
care about.
time, right?
That's right. Or your time, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, sorry, feel like I'm a little bit on my soapbox here, but what
It's fine.
what I think it's really an interesting, and again, like, to this audience who is building things, I think really looking at your money story is a really important piece of this, understanding your relationship to money, your family of origins relationship to money, because I guarantee you, Matt, that whether you, like, if you're sitting there saying, oh, no, like, that was my parents or that was my grandparents, that doesn't have anything to do with me. Look at all these professional athletes, because that, I think, is what is mostly in the news, who make gazillions of dollars and then end up bankrupt, right?
Right.
So, and that, you could say, sure, does that have to do with their behavior? Of course, it has to do with their behavior. But I guarantee you, it has much more to do with their money story and getting
Wow.
congruent with their
Right.
family and their beliefs, right? Got to
Interesting.
deal with that
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And in terms of giving back and everything, why do you think that's so important?
I think we have so much privilege, so much privilege. And I think the world needs us. Like,
Mm,
it needs us. And also, too, I think it does something, if you want to just be okay, if that doesn't resonate with you, right? I think that what could resonate with you is how it makes you feel, right? That you are a contributor to something that you care about,
Yeah.
that you are making a difference in this world, that in some very small way you are repairing something that is broken in this world. Your job is not necessarily to fix it, right? But to contribute to the repair, I just think is it's a very human thing to do. I think you end up getting a tremendous amount of satisfaction and knowing that you're doing something. And you know what is just here's a funny thing, right? Like I do I think it's $2 and maybe 93 cents every month to Wiki, right? Wikipedia,
Oh, do you?
right? You know,
Awesome.
such a low rate because how often or maybe it's 73 cents. How often I use Wikipedia all the time, right? Not for business, mostly like to look up stuff, but I use it all the time. And they made it so easy for
Right.
me to, right? They're just like they I was up there on, it was this actually a number of years ago, right? Like I was on the site and they're like, "Hey, this is our like sort of annual appeal," right?
Yep.
I was like,
Seen that.
"Okay, sure.
Mhm.
I'm using this for free. You're asking for $2.73. It's kind of a no-brainer, right?"
Mhm. Well, I think the beautiful thing about this is like it can be very personal to you, like something that benefits you in a way, or some experience you went through. I've talked to so many people over the years that they had some kind of event in their life, and that's the catalyst. That's the
Right.
thing. I want to help people that have that or problem or
Mhm.
contribute. Yeah, I love that. That's a great message for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
So
go ahead.
no, do you got anything to say on that?
No, no, no.
Otherwise, no, you don't?
I always do, but I'm gonna let you talk.
No, I love this. See, I'm having such a good time. Like I feel like we're just scratching the surface, and you know, that's what I love about these conversations. So you never know where you're going to end up. We didn't plan to talk about that today, and I love it. But anyway, so I'm actually going to rewind and kind of these last few minutes here. So you got into coaching. Back to your origin story. You got into coaching. You're doing all this amazing stuff. You're helping people. You're helping businesses. I mean, how's that going? You've been doing that ever since? That was back in when?
Yeah, so I
Early?
started in 2010,
Yeah.
so it's been a minute, right?
You're still doing it.
And I'm still
Gosh,
doing it.
that's
Yeah,
great.
and I think that it's going great, right? And I think what it is really evolved into to keep the thread going is those leaders and managers in businesses who are really technically good at what they do, but they're not great people managers, right?
Uh,
You know what a lot of them, Matt, this is sort of my favorite line, right? Which I think a lot of people can relate to is like, why don't they just do their darn job? Right? Like they got a job description. Like,
all
why
right.
do I
Just plug them in.
plug them in? Do the darn job, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, what is interesting is that often happens. So that's why I say they're very competent people, right? Because they're like, I don't need to be managed, right? Like, I'm productive. I get my things done.
Yeah.
Why can't they just follow suit, right? And it really brings together, I think, a lot of things that we've talked about already, which is that it's that inability to flex. if you can't do it the way I do it or the way that I model it for you or I tell you to do it, I got nothing, right? Like I got
Mm.
nothing more than that. And so when we have diverse teams, which we want and need,
Mhm.
managing them can be tricky, right? And I think if you add in leaders who have to make that, I like to call it the squish, right? So they have somebody from above with expectations for their group and for them personally. And then you've got a team that you've got to manage from below. There are often time management issues, priority issues. Delegation issues? What do I keep and what do I do? And here is one of the most interesting ones, which a lot of people don't think of, which is as either a lower level manager or as an individual contributor, I have a list and I check things off and I get my performance is judged by my actions, what
Mm.
I do, right? When I get to be a senior manager, my performance is most often judged by how my team is performing.
Mm.
And making that shift as a leader to what success looks like. And then how do I continue to grow my skill set and my career? Often it's very helpful to have a coach to help you make that transition, right? And what I would also say, Matt, we talked a little bit about this before we got on air, which is what if I'm good? What if I'm doing
Oh,
well,
yeah.
right? And why would I need a coach, right? Or, why would my team need a coach? If we're doing well, what's the problem, right? Well, if we use another sports metaphor, why do you think LeBron James can continue to perform at the level he performs? And you could take any professional athlete because he has a nutrition coach. I mean, he is a coach. He's got more coaches than, anybody, any professional athlete that I've ever known, right? But every top performer has a coach or many coaches, right? If you buy into the idea of you can always do better, and frankly, we don't know what we don't know,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
and you
think
find out what you don't know when something goes wrong or
that's right.
things crash and
So,
burn. Yeah.
right, what if I think the other thing is too, is that I find a lot of my clients take for granted the pace of the pace of their life, right?
Mhm.
That, well, the fact that I put my kids to bed and then do an hour or 2 of work, that's just what it takes to get the job done,
Mhm.
right? They don't even question it, right? And, my question would be maybe, right? I mean, I don't know that the answer is no, but I think it is an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah.
Is that actually true, right?
Right.
Um, you know, have you set your business up so that you can go on a 2-week vacation and not have anybody contact you and know that nothing broke while you were gone?
That's a sweet place to be. Yeah, I
Right,
mean, you take a lot, like, as you're getting into business, even me sometimes, like, I feel you become you're just reacting and you're working every block of time you can find to keep things going.
right,
But having a coach and somebody to help you and to look at those things and ask those questions and analyze your situation and step back and third party looking at what you're doing. And there's opportunity, like you can actually design your business or redesign it to better fit a lifestyle that maybe you envision or would be better for you. That's what it
That's right.
sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And or, you know, maybe you have another idea, right?
Mm,
Maybe you have
yeah.
something else. I have a client that they built a proprietary software for their business because they couldn't find what they needed in the marketplace, right? And what they've realized over time is that other people could actually, like, they could license that software, right? And so that's like a whole nother business in the business, but the business has to be able to grow, to sustain and grow without you being in the day to day in order to make that happen. Right.
To make that time, yeah. I mean, so something, another little personal story I throw in here. So I got something over here. I have this little cup of pencils and actually an old brush that I'm revisiting. I used to be an artist in my young days. I still am. Uh, but I put it down for many years to build businesses, and my creative energy went into web design development and doing all this stuff. But recently, in this past 6 months or so, I've been actually it was December, so however many months that was, 4 or 5 months. I picked up the pencil again. I started drawing again, but I've consciously that's something that I felt I was ready for, and I wanted to make, like build that into my life, but without crashing my business. Like my business had to be in a place where, okay, it's stable. I'm still doing that. That's still my main thing. It's still my income. I'm able to do that, but slowly break out this time, committed every day to sit down for however, the time block of time I've decided, and to get back into my craft. And that's something that's again, that's I'm designing my life. Like this is something
Right.
that's been kind of missing, and I'm kind of
Right.
revitalizing that side of me. So,
I
uh, you know,
love that.
yeah,
Coming from another creative person that, is like music to my ears. Actually, you know what
awesome.
is very funny? I'm gonna just this is like such a random story, but I, recently put together a playlist, like, just of, like songs, right? I'm just like, "These are
Hmm.
the songs that make me happy," right? So, I actually have because our kids are older, so I have a room in my house that is my craft room, right? So a
Okay.
couple of weeks ago, I took my like Bose speaker, my really nice like surround sound speaker, and just hooked my phone up to my playlist. And I'm in my craft room, and I was making something and really enjoying myself. And occasionally, I got up and I like dancing to the music, and
Nice.
then I'm like, oh my god, like. I love all these songs.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, yeah, because it's my playlist, right?
Right. Of course. It's
I'm like
amazing.
"Oh my god, they know me so well."
That's perfect. Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, I need to have you back again someday. We need to do a part two, part three. There's so many things we could talk about, and I just really enjoy talking with you. But we do need to wrap it up. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. So, if somebody wants to learn more about what you do, and it sounds like we've kind of understand your sweet spot, the people you like to work with, how can they reach out to you? Where's your website? And do you hang out anywhere like LinkedIn or anything like that? Somebody wanted to reach out to you?
Yeah, so the 2 best places to find me is my website, shockingly, is kimmillerhershon.com. I know,
Ah.
very creative. And, and, I'm on LinkedIn every single day. So I post at least once a day on LinkedIn, very active. So, if nothing else, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then the other fun thing, which will get you the link for, is that I do a newsletter once a week, and it's got one thing. we just talk about one thing. It's all there, always with a suggestion of how you might want some questions you might ask yourself or how you might want to implement it. And then there's always a fun picture, either a fun outfit or a fun craft project or, something that I made or cooked.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
actually, it's funny. We were talking, I think before we hit record, I was saying how I was on LinkedIn and, LinkedIn is, I go there a few times a day and it's so repetitive and it's a lot of the same stuff. And then you were there. So I encourage, because you just brightened up the whole room.
Aw.
And I just encourage everybody to follow her because she'll brighten up your feed and probably also give you some great advice and everything. So anyway, I'm going to go now. And we're going to go now. We're going to go somewhere. Thanks for joining us, Kim. It's been a real pleasure. Till next
Thank
time.
you, Matt. I really appreciate it. This is really fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And UnifiedLabs.ai is where we explore smart, practical ways to integrate AI directly into your website and e-commerce flows. From intelligent chatbots to marketing automation to back-end reporting, all with a strong focus on user experience and making your systems work smarter. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with someone who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building smarter, bolder, and with purpose.